The topics and opinions expressed on the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4WN Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4WN Radio, its employees, or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4WN Radio.
Books, beauty products, science, fashion, and glam talk. From Bollywood to Hollywood, it's Dr. Afshan Hashmi's radio show every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, right here on W4WN Radio, the Women's for Women network. And here's your host, international speaker, educator, award-winning entrepreneur, and best-selling author, Dr. Afshan Hashmi.
Hello everyone, this is Dr. Afshan Hashmi, live from the Florida studio of W4WN Radio and Talk 4 TV, and this show is syndicated worldwide to 300 million listeners. So just think, if you give me sponsorship, your product will be promoted in a very grand way to 300 million listeners worldwide. So if you want to give me sponsorship, you can contact me at Afshan at drafshanhashmi.com. I am looking for sponsorship for this show and for my K4HD radio and Talk 4 TV and my private show, which is on my YouTube channel, as well as it goes on my doco series, and that is also syndicated worldwide to 300 million listeners. So I am looking for sponsorships for these shows, and if you give me sponsorship, I will give you a very reasonable rate, and you can contact me at Afshan at drafshanhashmi.com. Having said that, friends, please go and buy these two books, because I finance these shows through the sale of this book. The first one is The Modern Mughal Mentality, New Strategies to Succeed in India and the Global Marketplace. And when this book came, there was there was lot of buzz going on Hindi buzzword jugaad, which I have conceptualized as thinking outside the box. And also there is a new business model, and if you incorporate strategies given in it, you will be very successful in your business. So please go and buy this book and give me an honest review. And this book was hot number one new release on Amazon as well as Amazon bestseller. And the second one is The Outbreak of a Monstrous Infection. When this book came in 2019, there was no trace of coronavirus, and in a very unique story, I have told my fans and readers what bioterrorism is and what a virus can do, and how bioterrorism spreads. And there is a very, very special story which I have concocted from my mind. And just think that this book came before there was any trace of coronavirus, and this book was also an Amazon bestseller. So please go and buy these two books and give me an honest review. And I want these books to go in every corner of the globe, and everyone in this globe reads these books and get insights from it. Having said that, friend, now I will ask Jason, my sound engineer, to please play sponsorship film.
Hello everyone, this is Dr. Afshan Hashmi, live from a barn in Virginia, and I just wanted to say, for my W4WN Radio and Talk 4 TV, I request everyone who is listening to please give sponsorships if you want these shows to continue, because this show is syndicated worldwide to more than 300 million listeners. So if you give me sponsorship, your product will be promoted to more than 300 million listeners around the globe. And I wanted to tell you that to make these kind of shows, it requires a lot of money and energy. So I just want to request a sponsorship, and cheers and bye bye.
And friends, today's book is called Operation Dragon Inside the Kremlin Secret War on America. And it is a very interesting book. And see the page, the beautiful cover of this book. And this book is written by Ambassador R. James Woolsey, former Director of Central Intelligence, and Lieutenant General Ion Mihai Pacepa. And see this beautiful cover of the book. Having said, friends, now I will read about the book. Former Director of Central Intelligence R. James Woolsey and former Romanian acting spy chief Lieutenant General Ion Mihai Pacepa, who was granted political asylum in the US in 1978, describe why Russia remains an extremely dangerous force in the world, and they finally and definitely put to rest the question of who killed President Kennedy on November 22, 1963. All evidence points to the fact that the assassination carried out by Lee Harvey Oswald was ordered by Soviet Premier Nikita Khrushchev, acting through what was essentially the Russian leader's personal army, the KGB, now known as the FSB. This evidence, which is codified as most things in foreign intelligence, are has never before been jointly decoded by a top US foreign intelligence leader and a former Soviet Bloc spy chief familiar with KGB patterns and codes. Meanwhile, dozens of conspiracy theorists have written books about the JFK assassination during the past 56 years. Most of these theories blame America and were largely triggered by the KGB disinformation campaign implemented in the intense effort to remove Russia's own fingerprints that blamed intern Lyndon Johnson, the CIA secretive groups of American oilmen, Howard Hughes, Fidel Castro, and the Mafia. Russian propaganda sowed hatred and contempt for the US quite effectively, and its operations have morphed into many forms, including the recruitment of global terror groups and the backing of enemy nation state. Yet it was the JFK assassination with its explosive aftermath of false conspiracy theories that set the model for blaming America first. About the author, Ambassador Robert James Woolsey, former head of Central Intelligence Agency, is a lawyer and diplomat who has served in the US government on many different occasions. He has held presidential appointments in two Republican and two Democratic administrations. He also has been a member of the National Commission on Terrorism, the commission to assess the ballistic missile threat to the US, the President's Commission on Federal Ethics Law Reform, the President's Blue Ribbon Commission on Defense Management, and the President's Commission on Strategic Forces. Lieutenant Colonel Ion Mihai Pacepa, the highest ranking intelligence official ever to defect from the Soviet bloc, served as acting chief of Communist Romania's espionage service and top advisor to President Nicolae Ceausescu. Today, with assassination threats and $1 million rewards still hanging over his head because of his defection, Pasiba lives in the US under a CIA protective identity and remains active as an uniquely insightful writer on current affairs. He is the author of a number of books, including Red Horizons, The True Story of Nicole and Alina Kosciuszko's Crimes, Lifestyle and Corruption and Disinformation. Former spy chief reveals secret strategies for undermining freedom, attacking religion, and promoting terrorism. Editorial reviews: Woolsey and Pasiba peel back layers of secrecy hidden for decades and reveal the dangerous strategic thick intelligence threat posed by Moscow's spy services, past and present. Bill Gertz, journalist and author of Deceiving the Sky Inside Communist China's Drive for Global Supremacy, Spike, the Warren Commission, and a thousand books on JFK's assassination. Woolsey and Pacepa give an explosive account in Operation Dragon with best and first-hand evidence of what really happened in Dallas that fateful day. Christopher Ruddy, CEO, Newsmax Media Inc. So now, friends, I will go into the break, and before going into the break, I will tell you the line of action of today's shows. So when I come back, I will read from this book, and then I will give my thoughts on the book. And if time permits, I will give you more read from this book. So now, friends, I go on a break and will be back soon.
Would you love exposure for your business, product, or service to over 300 million potential listeners? Send an email to info@talkformedia.com. And now let's hear from some of our sponsors.
Chapter 2: How Jugaad leads to multi-sector success stories in India, including definitions of the Jugaad management principle business model. Of the book, The Modern Mughal Mentality, New Strategies to Succeed in India and the Global Marketplace. Inspiration. True Jugaad is an inspiration on how to create products using technology that meet the price-value equation. According to a Harvard Business Review article featuring expert Prahlad and Mashelkar, most innovation programs are built on the assumptions of affluence and abundance. We see the rich and the young in both the developed and the developing countries demanding environmental friendly products and services. They also believe that affordability and sustainability are crucial to driving successful business today. New technologies and radical business models are important not only to penetrate mass markets in India but in the entire world. By reconfiguring all areas of the business structure, they will pull.
A monstrous infection is spreading worldwide. OMG, is this a simple infection or a deliberate attempt to ruin the human population? Or maybe it's bioterrorism. What is this global infection and who is spreading it? Help us find out. Go to Amazon and search for The Outbreak of a Monstrous Infection. The human race needs your help to make this go viral. Go to Amazon.com and read The Outbreak of a Monstrous Infection to find out what happens next. Go now! The world is depending on you.
And now, back to Dr. Afshan Hashmi's radio show.
Now, friends, before starting to read from the book and review the book of today's show, I would like to remind you that please go and buy these two books and give me an honest review. And the first book I wrote was it's hot #1 new release on Amazon and was also an Amazon bestseller. And the second book I wrote was an Amazon bestseller. And I want this book for everyone to buy it and give their thoughts so that I can read their thoughts, and they can write their thoughts on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, and wherever books are sold, so that I can have lot of reviews. The more reviews I have, the more success I have, and I will really ask my fans and followers to please go and buy these two books and give me an honest review. And having said that, friends, now I will ask Jason, my sound engineer, to please play the sponsorship films. But before playing the sponsorship film, I want to tell you that please give me sponsorship for this show and for my K4 HD radio and Talk for TV show, as well as on my private show. And all these shows are syndicated worldwide to 300 million listeners. And my private show, which goes into my doco series, and it is also syndicated worldwide to 300 million listeners. And I'm looking for sponsorships, and I will give you a sponsorship in a very reasonable rate. Please contact me at afshan@drafshanhashmi.com if you want these shows to go on as always. Having said that, now I will ask Jason, my sound engineer, to please play the second sponsorship movie.
Hello everyone, this is Dr. Rakshan Rashmi with W4W and I just wanted to request you that please give me sponsorship, and I am live from Maryland, and this show is syndicated worldwide with more than 300 million listeners. And to produce these kind of shows, it requires lots of time and money. So please give me sponsorship if you want these shows to continue. And I'm live from Maryland. Having said that, friend, cheers and bye bye.
So, friends, as I showed you before, also, this is the beautiful cover of the book, and now I will start reading from this book. And first, I will read the introduction. Introduction. Until its wars against communist expansion in Korea and Vietnam, America was accustomed to victory from 1776 to 1782, and in 1812 America gained and maintained its liberty from the British Empire, the most powerful in the world. In 1846 Mexico attacked and was soundly defeated. In 1898, the United States went to war to keep Cuba independent of Spain, decimating the Spanish fleet and forcing Spain to sue for peace. In World War I, in which over 40 million Europeans were killed, the United States quickly put together an army of 4 million and became instrumental in defeating the German aggressor. In World War II, almost half a million Americans died to defeat Nazism. At its end, a united America rebuilt her vanquished enemies. It took 7 years and trillions of dollars to turn Hitler's Germany, Mussolini's Italy, and Hirohito's Japan into prosperous democracies. But the effort made the United States the uncontested leader of the world, a fact that has kept the peace for over 70 years. America has always stood against tyranny from any ideological source. Russia, during its socialist period, killed over 90 million people throughout its empire. It stole American nuclear technology. It murdered one of our presidents. It generated today's international terrorism. Now, our intelligence professionals say it openly interferes in America's internal affairs. This book is about why confronting such behavior must be at the center of America's foreign policy. This is the first, and it will be surely the last book in history to be co written by a former director of the US foreign intelligence community and an ex Soviet Bloc spy. chief. As communism collapsed economically in the early 90s, Pacepa effectively sent a socialist tyrant, Nicolae Ceausescu of Romania, to the gallows by writing a book entitled Red Horizons, Knowledge is Power. This book adds to our knowledge base about Russia as it was in the Soviet period, and as it continues to be. The Karl Marx Communist Manifesto has turned 172 years old, leaving behind the wreckage of nations like trailer parks after a hurricane. Communism's late socialist leaders are today reviled universally as tyrants, from the Soviet Union's Vladimir Lenin and Joseph Stalin to Cuba's Fidel Castro, from Yugoslavia's Josip Broz Tito to Bulgaria's Todor Zivkov, from Albania's Enver Hoxha to Hungary's Matthias Rakosi, from Guinea's Sekou Toure to Tanzania's Julius Nyerere and Venezuela's Hugo Chavez. For years, the USSR's Nikita Khrushchev and Romania's Nicole Ceausescu were even found unworthy of a marked grave. The United States fought the Cold War for 44 long years. It may have won, but unlike other wars, this war didn't end with the defeated enemy throwing down its weapons. The Soviet Union has changed its name, but at 6612 100 square miles, Russia is still the largest country on earth geographically. It also still has the world's largest stockpile of nuclear and bacteriological weapons and the world's second largest fleet of ballistic nuclear missile submarines, a fact our politicians and press tend to ignore. Russia remains largely a mystery to America, but it is a puzzle that we assume away as subdued or as having collapsed at our peril. On March 16, 2014, Moscow State Television announced with fanfare that Russia could now turn its arch enemy, the US, into radioactive ash. A single Russian electromagnetic pulse EMP nuclear bomb launched above the US mainland from a fishing boat off either our east or west coast could collapse the entire United States electric grid and all that depends on its communication, transportation, banking, finance, and food and water. This is all that is currently necessary to sustain modern civilization and the lives of roughly 330 million Americans. NATO's Deputy Supreme Commander in Europe, General Sir Adrian Bradshaw, warned that the threat from Russia and the risk it brings of miscalculation resulting in a strategic conflict represent an existential threat to our whole being. We agree. And now, friends, I will go on a break, and this was little bit from the introduction of the book. And when I come back, I will resume my reading. But first, I will give you thoughts on this book.
Would you love exposure for your business, product, or service to over 300 million potential listeners? Send an email to info@talkformedia.com. And now let's hear from some of our sponsors.
A monstrous infection is spreading worldwide. Oh my God, is this a simple infection or a deliberate attempt to ruin the human population? Or maybe it's bioterrorism. What is this global infection and who is spreading it? Help us find out. Go to Amazon and search for The Outbreak of a Monstrous Infection. The human race needs your help to make this go viral. Go to Amazon.com and read The Outbreak of a Monstrous Infection to find out what happens next. Go now. The world is depending on you.
The Outbreak of a Monstrous Infection, Chapter 1, 1964 to 2018, and this is the sample track, and it is read by Dr. Afshan Nahid Hashmi. In a sprawling bungalow in Potomac, Maryland, USA, lived Dr. Honey Singh, a board-certified internal medicine and family practice physician, along with his beautiful wife, Baby Singh. Baby Singh was a fashionista and was funding women's causes through her Honey Babe Foundation. She had a ladies' book club by the name of Baby's Glam and Glitzy Club, which had many glam and glitzy ladies who were professionals living in Washington, D.C., Potomac, Maryland, Virginia, and even Beverly Hills, California, as well as elites from all of America meeting at her place on the last Wednesday of every month, discussing various aspects of charities they wanted her and Dr. Honey to fund. In this club, there was a wide spectrum of career women. There were doctors, lawyers, actresses, business owners, and models, to name a few. In these book club meetings, members would come prepared after reading a book of a famous woman author, and that author was even invited from any part of the world to give her presentation, followed by a Q&A in this prestigious and elite gathering.
And now, back to Dr. Afshan Hashmi's radio show.
So first of all, as I said earlier, now I will give you my review and also my thoughts on this book. And this is my review of this book. And here I go. A fascinating and chilling read. Got lot of interesting information. A must read for every American to know the facts. The book reveals never before revealed details of not just the Soviet complicity in the JFK assassination, but also Russia's unending espionage and military campaigns against Americans. The book is a collaboration between a former CIA director and the head of Romanian intelligence, the highest level Soviet Bloc defector to the West in history. I give this book 5 out of 5 stars. So, this was my review and thoughts on the book, and now I will resume reading some more chapters from this book. And this is chapter 1, and here you can see that. Chapter 1, Socialist Russia and Illegal Intelligence Tyranny. On September 20, 2004, a senior Democratic Party figure running for the White House said during a PBS radio interview with Jim Lehrer, "Well, let me just say quickly that I have had an extraordinary experience of watching up close and personal that transition in Russia because I was there right after the transformation, and I was probably one of the first senators to go down into the KGB underneath Treblinka Treblinka Square and see reams of files with names on them. It sort of brought home the transition to democracy that Russia was trying to make. We understand that confusing Treblinka, a Nazi death camp in Poland, with the KGB headquarters at the Lubyanka in Moscow could have been a slip of the tongue, but the fact that a main runner for the White House thought that he could claim to understand Russia because he had on junket viewed a few KGB archive files written in a language he could not read is scary. To romanticize the Russian danger leaves us unprepared to face its reality. So, this was from chapter 1, and now I will read from chapter 2. And this is chapter 2. Chapter 2, Undercover Feudalism in the 20th Century. Russia was the first hell on earth that legitimized theft and the elimination of despite group of wealthy people as tools of national policy under the doctrine of socialism. The kulak or bourgeois class was eliminated and its property redistributed to the victors of the November 1917 socialist revolution. The imperial family's wealth and rich Russians' land were seized by the new Communist Party and the Russian economy was nationalized. Property rights were eliminated and most of Russia's major property owners were killed. In 1931, socialism became the only religion allowed in Russia. Stalin's political police dynamited the Cathedral of Christ the Savior, the site of the premiere in 1882 of Tchaikovsky's famous 1812 overture, a symphony written to give thanks to God and the heroes of the war against Napoleon. Some 50,000 other Russian churches were also demolished. Some 600 bishops, 40,000 priests, and 120,000 monks and nuns were killed. So now I go to read little bit from chapter 3. Socialist anti Semitism. Stalin, who succeeded Lenin to the Kremlin in 1922, hailed from the remote land of Georgia. The Jews had traditionally been serfs in Georgia until 1871 when serfdom was abolished there. Stalin's own conventional Georgian and anti Semitism was simply transformed into national policy carried out by his political police. When Stalin decides to eliminate his main rival Leon Trotsky, his political police were told to put together a dozen form Sia operation portraying Trotsky as a Jewish spy paid by American Zionism. He then expelled Trotsky from the country. That allegation also served as justification for Stalin to have Trotsky barbarically assassinated with an ice pick in Mexico City without even causing most of Russia to blink. So this was little bit from this chapter, and now I will read little bit from chapter 4. Stealing America's nuclear bomb. Soon after World War II broke out, Stalin became worried that the world's big boys had bigger weapons than he did, so he set out to steal the Americans' nuclear bomb technology and famously succeeded. After becoming head of Romania's technological espionage service, Pacepa learned some of the details. At first, Stalin tried to stay out of the fight by making a pact with Adolf Hitler, the most immediate threat, but Hitler double crossed him by suddenly and without warning invading the Soviet Union on June 22, 1941, in Operation Barbarossa. The crisis pushed Stalin to consider the fact that the Americans had many brilliant Nobel Prize scientists working on game changing weapons, while the Soviet Union had no scientist of that caliber. To catch up, he set out to steal and copy the technology, ordering his chief intelligence officer, Levin Beria, in mid 1941 to get cracking on the operation. So, friends, this was from this book. And now, friends, I just wanted to remind you that please go and buy these two books and give me an honest review. And through the sale of this book, I finance these shows. And also, please give me a in sponsorship for this show on W4WN Radio and Talk 4 TV, as well as on K4HD Radio and Talk 4 TV, as well as also on my private show, which goes into my doco series. And all these shows, including my private show, is syndicated worldwide to 300 million listeners. So just imagine, if you give me sponsorship, how your product will be promoted in a grand way. Having said that, friends, I also want to remind you that on this show and my other two shows, I review books. I am in conversation with authors and business owners, and also I review cosmetic and makeup products, as well as movies, and also I review TV serials. So if you want your shows to reviewed in this and be syndicated to worldwide to 300 million listeners, then you can contact me at Afshan at drafshanhashmi.com. I have reviewed thousands of cosmetic and makeup products, books, as well as movies and TV shows. And also, if any Bollywood, Hollywood, or Netflix, or Amazon producers and filmmakers are listening, I want this book to be made into a movie or a TV serial. So please contact me at Afshan at drafshanhashmi.com. Having said that, friends, now I sign off from this episode of my W4WN Radio and Talk 4 TV show, and I will see you next Wednesday at 7 p.m. US Eastern Time. And tomorrow on K4HD Radio and Talk 4 TV, I will be reviewing another book. So do come and join at 6 p.m. US Eastern Time on K4HD.com or Talk4TV.com, or on the YouTube channel of Talk 4 TV, or my own Afshan Hashmi YouTube channel. And all these shows are syndicated worldwide to 300 million listeners. And I would love to hear from you, your comments, how you are liking my show, and what else do you want me to add to my shows. Having said that, friend, cheers and bye bye.
You have been listening to Dr. Afshan Hashmi's radio show on W4WN Radio, the Women for Women Network. Tune in live right here every Wednesday at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. Would you love exposure for your business, product, or service to over 300 million potential listeners? Send an email at info@talk4media.com. And remember, if you missed any part of this show or want to hear it again, find our featured show on iHeartRadio, where all past episodes are available on demand 24/7. See you next Wednesday at 6 p.m. Eastern Time.